like sometimes we're frustrated because there's things that we get to test, which is like, why isn't it like that? Why doesn't it do this? So at some point we just decided, well, for some things, like we can just think about ideas and brainstorm, and then we came up with a couple of ideas, and one of them is the bag, which I think has some very, very innovative functions that we haven't seen in any other bag so far. And we have, I think you disclose it also in the article, we have worked on this originally with a manufacturer, but now the next step, we need somebody else to actually bring it to reality.
What's new in filmmaking technology this week? News, reviews, education, insights, opinions, and ideas from the CineD Newsroom with Nino Leitner and Johnny Bahiri. This is Focus Check, the weekly Cinetech podcast.
Welcome to episode 70 of CineD Focus Check podcast. Welcome, Johnny.
Hello, Nino. How are you?
Always the same question, always good. And
well, we must feel good because we are really just after a site maintenance thing, and the site is in a good shape. Everything is running very fast.
Joking, right? We just had a PHP update. And as we are recording this, we can't access the backend, but it's gonna be fine by the time you hear this.
Thing.
Yeah. Now let's go through what we're gonna talk about today. So no big news actually in the camera world this week. I would say it's fair enough to say, but there's still always stuff to talk about that interested us this week. We're going to talk about the Hohem iSteady M7 AI tracking smartphone gimbal stabilizer, where I shot a video at Build Expo in New York City about it last week. We're talking about the CineD bag. What is that? And why do you need it? And why is this actually a call for manufacturers? We talk about Magic Lantern. Haven't heard from them in so many years. They're back from the dead-ish. And we're going to talk about why and who still needs them. We'll talk about a video that we published that is about Bono.
Which Bono? The famous
the
Bono?
The U2 Bono.
This one.
So the Vision Pro. So somebody made a feature-length film, immersive film, the first one ever in the world for the Vision Pro. But in general, there hasn't been a feature-length immersive film before. And he did a documentary. His name is Elad Ofer, and he did a documentary about Bono. And we have a long interview by our writer Ruben, who did a very nice interview with the director. And we're going to talk about that. We will talk about Blackmagic camera 9.6, which only affects the micro studio camera 4K G2. We will talk about an Eddie AI update that actually gives us support for multiple languages and B-roll and so on. And iPadOS 26. Why are we talking about iPadOS? Well, it finally will make, hopefully, editing on the iPad a lot more feasible because background processes, background renders are here. And I tried it. And we'll mention the Peak Design Pro tripod that just, launched a Kickstarter a couple weeks ago. We'll talk about a Laowa 18 to 50 millimeter fisheye lens, and that's about it. No, and the poll, right? You have a poll?
There's a poll, and we can also quickly mention the new Panasonic firmware updates for some selected S-line cameras, which is nice to see Panasonic. But
should we start with the poll?
Start with the poll. Okay. First of all, thank you everybody for last week's poll that was about 32-bit audio recording. We actually got a lot of people commenting, and it's fascinating to see opinions and also learn different stuff. The good thing was that many audio people actually answered if it's necessary or not necessary. Will you make a buying decision based on audio equipment has this 32-bit flow? But this week,
the question was not that the camera should have it. So in general, if you will invest in audio equipment that
does not have the 32-bit, which we personally, from our experience, from making documentary films, a lot of times, when I'm running alone, 32-bit recording is literally essential, especially it's like a safety net. But today's poll is about camera to cloud workflow, and we want to know how much has this technology really caught on. We know that camera companies are investing a lot of money in implementing camera to cloud in their cameras, and it doesn't matter if it's now Frame.io or creators from Sony. the facility and the platform is all there. But we are just curious to know, did you try working with this? Is this part of your workflow? Maybe you don't even know what is camera to cloud, like what to do with this. So I really hope that you guys will take the initiative and also dive into what we wrote. Maybe answer, please leave a comment, because I think a lot of when we talk about the future of our industry, probably camera to cloud has a very defined and secure. It's gonna stay it's gonna stay here. Although I really hope that one day we will not even need memory cards in our cameras and everything can be recorded to the to the cloud immediately. What do you think?
Well, I think it's gonna catch on, especially for anything that kind of needs close to real-time editing. Of course, I mean, if you're, like you probably at some point or already don't need any expensive, connections, fiber connections, whatever, with cameras anymore, because you can basically have Wi-Fi built in and maybe through a hotspot 5G connected already upload the proxies and somebody's editing. But it depends on what you're shooting. Like if you don't need this, I mean, if you're just shooting documentary or feature film and there is no need to probably do this right away.
Exactly. That's the thing about it. It's the workflow. I think we can agree that if you work in a collaborative way, like you are part of a bigger production, you want to shoot, and then the footage has to go somewhere to the cloud, somebody has to log it, watch it, and edit it, you probably want to use it. But if you are an independent filmmaker, at least now, there is no really a reason.
If you edit your own stuff, you will never need it.
Exactly. Unless you want to back it up park it for some time. But
I think most people work with other people who are editing their stuff, and then of course it makes sense. And I think even for sets that haven't actually thought about this yet, it might make sense, because if you have a DIT or somebody on set, they can already do just to try out how different shots go together, or like if something needs to be reshot or not. That's very easy to do now with this. As the crew is still shooting, maybe in one corner of the studio, somebody can already DIT without actually getting the real footage. They can already, not even a full editor. They can just cobble together those shots and just see if it works. And the client, if it's a commercial or something, see if it flows together or it doesn't. Yeah,
we can say in a very open way that we are using it quite a lot for two main reasons. One, during exhibitions, many times we do the camera to cloud workflow, and then we have an editor, sometimes even remotely, who literally download and then editing the footage. It's working quite well depending on how busy the whole infrastructure is when it comes to upload the images. And the other way that we do implementing and working with this, we have our own account, and a lot of the footage goes there of different stuff that we do, and then we can easily share it between team members, either to watch, either to approve, either to give feedback and so on. So we are parking a lot of the footage there. But yeah, we would really love to hear from you guys. If you're already working with camera to cloud, if you seldomly use it, if you're aware of camera to cloud, or it's for you camera to what, and you never heard of it.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of people just need to think about how they can probably still kind of implement it in their workflow, and they haven't even thought about it, or just are in the way of kind of implementing it. I think it's a kind of a secret weapon. If you as a production company, if you manage to implement it properly into your kind of workflows, I think it can be very beneficial, because it will make you more efficient.
You know what? I'm really surprised. None of the big camera manufacturers ever teamed up with a 5G provider, for example, like a worldwide provider.
But there is no worldwide 5G provider.
T-Mobile, for example, is rather kind of. It doesn't matter, even if it's a regional one, let's say North America or Europe.
Yeah.
To team up, create a special creators package that that you can use it without fear, because it's all about data, and it's all about probably unlimited data, and you kind of want to be careful with how much you are uploading. But I think in the minute that will be sorted out, that there is no fear to use it and upload the footage, from that point onward, this whole workflow can be very successful.
Well, also, and the cameras all just have Wi-Fi. Why don't they have a 5G built in, right? That's for me. I mean, that's the same thing I wonder about, like MacBooks. Why has Apple not yet put a SIM card or eSIM? I mean, with eSIMs, you don't actually need the physical thing, right? I'm hearing this is mostly down to antennas, which I don't understand quite because, I mean, my iPhone doesn't have an antenna sticking out, so I guess they could do it somewhere here as well. That would be very useful, right? But there must be a reason why laptops don't have it and why cameras don't have it yet.
Yeah.
I think there's probably more regulation to go through, like in terms of like they usually are they radiate a lot more, those devices that have 5G built in, and probably have to go through more regulation. But of course, I mean, that'd be useful. And like you said, the kind of a tight package to several. I mean, you need all kinds of, like mobile phone providers basically to support this and to have an attractive proposition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. But
actually, the Teradek has this. The Teradek has a deal like that with a couple of providers, as far as I know.
Yeah, but I'm not so sure. I'm not familiar if you can purchase this type of service by itself.
Yeah, it's just North America, I think.
Or it's always tied to their products.
It's tied to their products.
Well, yeah. What did it?
Of course it is.
Yeah, but if there's a business case, why not to open it for others?
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Good. Let's move on to a little video I made at the Build. The other one we talked about last week, where we talked about the Manfrotto One tripod. I also shot a short video interview with Hohem about their iSteady M7 smartphone gimbal stabilizer. Now, one of my first questions in the discussion was, there has been such an abundance of gimbals, especially for smartphones over the last 10, 15 years, that you wonder how much innovation can still be done in this field, to be honest, because, there's so many brands, a lot of Chinese brands like Hohem that have smartphone stabilizers, and it seemed to be quite a big market actually for people, shooting on their mobile phones and so on. But with this one, this intrigued me because it had some really, really smart ideas. So first of all, the one thing that's really different is that it has like an expandable stick.
Like a selfie stick?
There's like a selfie stick. It's like a built into the gimbal. So right above the handle, you can expand it and just like telescopically expand it. So the whole gimbal will actually be, I don't know how
longer,
actually. Quite a lot longer and further away from you, which of course makes it much easier to do, for example, low angle shots, because the phones have big screens anyway, so you can see what you're filming.
You can imitate a drone also.
You can do fake drone shots and stuff like that. And of course, that stuff was possible before. Usually, if you do this with another gimbal, you always have the 1/4-inch thread at the bottom, so you just put in a selfie stick. But this kind of builds the selfie stick into the gimbal, which I think is a smart idea. So you always have it with you. Then they have a little tracking module that is magnetically attached, that also doubles as a light, which is quite smart. So this can be either pointing at yourself to track your face, or you can track somebody else, and then you can switch it on and of course use it as an RGB light. Actually, it can do all kinds of colors. The tracking works quite well. They demoed it on the show by tracking
it was very impressive actually.
Constantly, and that worked perfectly. But the one thing that really stood out for me was the fact that, let me try and find it here in the video, that it can move out of its own way. So we know the problem that gimbals, the backside, what is it?
The right or left? The right side, I think.
The roll motor, is it the roll? No, it's not.
We can see it's on the right hand side.
Oh, it depends. It's different with each one. But basically the motor can, like one of the stabilizers, like the motors can move out of its own way. So basically it turns around and then, you film in the other direction. So for example, you see it here if you watch the video version of this. So it's kind of smart that it can do that, because I haven't seen this. I've seen it on a bigger gimbal before, but not on small gimbals like that. And cool product, very easy. I think quite cheap. I think it's $269. And if you need a smartphone gimbal, this might be one to look at. It also has a small removable
remote screen.
remote, which with a small screen, which gives you preview, and that also allows you to set keyframes. Like for time lapse, for example, and it's quite fully featured for product as small as this. Yeah.
Do you know if something like this exists for mirrorless cameras? Because a tiny step up, and maybe I would consider to use something like this with some of the mirrorless cameras that we are using and testing, because that looks like a very small package, very lightweight.
Well, the RS3 Mini, RS4 Mini from DJI is
from Hohem. I'm talking. Do you know?
Hohem also has something for. I asked him in the video for mirrorless cameras, but he was hinting at that new versions will be coming to those. Okay. So basically, yeah. So, but in terms of size, there's lots of them, of course, for mirrorless cameras too. Yeah.
Good. I mean, it's a solid company. I think they've been around for years now, and obviously they're very, very focused on producing those gimbals.
Yeah, it's a nice little thing, and I think they brought some fresh ideas to a very saturated product category, and that's always worth checking out.
Good.
Let's talk about the CineD bag. Why?
What's going on? Well, first of all, and again, guys, for complete transparency, we are trying very hard to introduce few products, CineD products, in the near future, and each of the products is very unique. Meaning, it's not a copy paste. It's not something that has been done before. This is not interesting for us. Nino and I are both documentary filmmakers. We're traveling the world. We have a lot of experience. We know what we need. We know what is missing, and we want to fill the gap and introduce unique products. One of those products is actually the CineD bag. And unlike other bags, and I really don't want to dive into the actual thing and talk too much about the bag itself, but with so many thousands of bags out there, it was very hard for us to find the bag that actually work well for us. So we designed a bag, and this bag is actually very unique with what it can do. Simply, there are no other bags in the market that will have the same features. It's not a cool bag. It's not a fashionable one. It's more like a production bag. So it's not cool. It's practical, which is maybe cool by itself. And we are actively seeking and looking for manufacturers to help us and produce this bag. So we know it will take some time and funds, but we will do our best to realize our dream. And I'm still very optimistic. It's actually an interesting journey and ride for us, because this is not something that we do on everyday basis. And of course, we're dedicating all our time for the site itself. But it's really it's a new path for us, and we are very eager to learn and see where it will take us.
I think that's the advantage that we have, because we're touching so many pieces of equipment all the time. Of course, like sometimes we are arrogant and think we know better. Not arrogant, but you know what I mean. It's like basically, like sometimes we're frustrated because there's things that we get to test, which is like, why isn't it like that? Why doesn't it do this? So at some point we just decided, well, for some things, like we can just think about ideas and brainstorm, and then we came up with a couple of ideas, and one of them is the bag, which I think has some very, very innovative functions that we haven't seen in any other bag so far. And we have, I think you disclose it also in the article, we have worked on this originally with a manufacturer, but now the next step, we need somebody else to actually bring it to reality. Yeah.
The problem was this type of bag needs an investment, because of course you can take off-the-shelf components, but then you will not be able to do what we want the bag to do. And I respect a lot the company that we try to work with. They're really great people. They're very good, but they are not maybe big enough to invest the money in molding of specific parts. And that's why we decided to separate as friends. And of course, some time was lost, but we both believe that there's a time for everything in life. And actually, since the article was published yesterday, we got some very interesting emails And that's very encouraging to see that people are visiting the site, of course, but they are responding. So if you are a manufacturer and you want to try to work together with us, just stay in contact or be in contact, and we will see what we can do together.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people will be excited about the features of this bag.
I'm sure there's if we will be able to realize this, you will see the difference between a bag and a production bag.
We can use the marketing slogan of, the Kinder Surprise. I think it doesn't exist in the US, but the eggs is like, it's not just chocolate, it's also something to play and to have fun. It's like that. It's not just a bag.
It's something to...
It comes with chocolate.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll be back after this message from our sponsor.
1 Minute Tips by Fujifilm and CineD, another part of our Film Set Rules series. Let's talk about the first assistant camera, or the first AC. The first AC is responsible for keeping the camera in perfect working order by monitoring battery life and card space, making sure the lens and sensor are free of scratches or dust, and making sure all the components are working properly, from the focus system to the wireless video feed. They also build and maintain the camera, take directions from the DP to swap lenses, and reposition camera to prep for the next take and pull focus during takes. A great first AC is precise, fast, and calm under pressure, because missing focus can be all it takes to ruin a perfect take. If you are organized and passionate about a career path as a camera person, this is the position for you. Stay tuned for more film roll breakdowns. 1 Minute Tips. Until next time.
And now back to the show. Let me move on to another piece of news, that is Magic Lantern is back. For you guys, a lot of in our audience might remember them because, of course, as many of you know, CineD used to be called Cinema 5D, and the 5D Mark II, the original Canon camera that started a lot of this DSLR revolution in 2008-9, was the first full frame camera that was able to shoot 1080p 30 at the beginning and then 24-25p, but it had a lot of shortcomings in terms of codec and like line skipping and all the kind of ways it recorded video, because it was never intended as a video camera. So there was a group of hackers that went by the name of Magic Lantern, kind of hacked the firmware and managed to develop something
to do more with the camera,
to get a lot more quality out of the camera,
but on expense of overheating and other stuff.
Yeah, the way it worked, you basically loaded like a special firmware that they made onto a compact flash card that you had to have loaded in the camera at any time, I think, in order to, because you couldn't actually replace the original firmware. It also meant that it's a non-destructive process, so you could always just remove it and just go back to the original firmware, which was nice.
So the camera was booting from the flash card?
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that. And then it's been so many years since I used it. I really, it's like, forgot. But I know that there has been, the original developer kind of disappeared and left the project at some point, in a way that there wasn't much documentation about the development process. So for the rest of this is all open source. Of course, nobody earned money. It's just a couple of enthusiasts that went by, not their real names, of course, as it's normal for those things to do online. And so a couple of people tried to pick it back up. They're still having some troubles identifying some stuff, but they managed to continue the project now. And I mean, we're still talking about old cameras, because Magic Lantern is only available for Canon DSLR cameras, which are, not really a thing anymore for new cameras, because we're in the mirrorless age, and the original EOS M, which was the first EOS camera from Canon that had no mirror, and it's also discontinued. Like, it's had a small sensor, and it was there, if you remember the first M mounts. I mean, this is basically something that was replaced by the RF mount later on. But those RF cameras are not hackable, or at least we haven't seen it, and I don't think there is much need, because you can record RAW on them anyway.
Yeah. I mean, the EOS M had an APS-C sensor, so it's not that it's not that small. But in any case, of course, when I read this type of news, and I'm asking myself, why do we need this at 2025? Because the cameras moved on; they're so much more capable of doing.
I think it's
a nostalgic thing.
It's becoming this nostalgic. It's almost like the the community, remember jailbreaking on the iPhone?
Of course, I was one of the first ones.
Yeah, exactly. Where you were trying to sideload apps actually before Apple had an app store.
Well, in our case, we had to have this because I bought my first iPhone in the US. When I didn't. Yeah, when I brought it to Europe, there was no. I think it was AT&T.
Yeah,
and there was no other way to use it in Europe.
It was locked too. Yeah, but anyway, the jailbreaking it's kind of the same thing because there's no point in jailbreaking anymore because you can basically get anything on the App Store now, and there's no limitation. Originally, the reason why I did it on one iPhone was because of I needed a wireless hotspot where that feature wasn't available yet on iPhone.
Crazy.
And then it enabled it, so it's kind of like there was no reason anymore. And similar to this is with the DSLRs from Canon, like you said, because newer cameras, of course, have RAW recording capabilities. I'm guessing, this is probably a bunch of talented kids that are programming that probably have DSLR cameras lying around that they want to, they're a little bit dated, but they want to put more use to them. And it's fair enough. I mean, absolutely. Yeah. Why not? Because those cameras, and we're talking about the new ones that are added, is the 6D Mark II, 7D Mark II, 200D, and the 750D. I think all of them are discontinued. And
let's give them the credit.
Of course,
for their,
amazing.
We really love it, and hopefully they will not forget my aging Canon EOS 1DC, which is still in the cupboard. Yeah, maybe that can become an 8K camera or record the RAW internally.
No, such a niche camera. I think sometimes it has to do with the fact that they might not have access to such a camera. You can send them yours.
Of course not.
So if anybody from Magic Lantern is listening, contact Johnny. He has this thing lying around. Yeah, but basically the newly supported models don't have all the Magic Lantern features unlocked yet. Apparently they're still working on stuff because they have to kind of probably re-engineer some stuff that the developer who left behind. But there's going to be an intervalometer, custom crop marks, shutter count, and a disable of that 30-minute
recording time?
like the power save thing where the camera shuts down.
Okay.
Yeah, that's which is also, of course, like a recording limit automatically kind of, and that's removed. So the first update is there. They're working on this. They said that they moved everything to Git, so they have a more modern kind of way of project organization between them, because I'm sure they're, kind of spread all over the world, people who work on this. And they're also looking for developers. So if you know the C programming language and you're a camera nerd, you might want to think about contacting the Magic Lantern team to be part of them. And let's see what they're capable of doing with newer cameras in the future. So
just surprise us. We'll be happy to report. And who knows, maybe the whole Magic Lantern will appear again as a phoenix.
Yeah, as a phoenix from the ashes. Yeah, it would be nice. And of course, I mean, again, somebody should do Magic Lantern for Sony cameras to make them capable of RAW video. That's the thing people want, I guess.
Are you encouraging hacking now? Or what?
No, I'm just saying. Well, if you do it with your own camera, you can do whatever you want, as long as you don't distribute it. But I'm just saying.
I'll be happy for USB-C recording, external recording before even RAW, honestly.
Yeah.
But
the question is if that can be re-engineered kind of. But it's funny that this is still kind of tied to only these Canon cameras. So I wonder if you could ever expand out of that. All right.
Okay.
Let's move on to Panasonic firmware updates for the LUMIX S1R2 and the S12 and S12E. So basically those very recently announced cameras.
That's right. And obviously Panasonic promising and delivering, which is really nice. And I think the most, the one that we really like among the three is, of course, the S12, although the S12E, which is much more economical, let's say, is well received. And it's nice that Panasonic is already supporting the new cameras. So for the S12 and the S12E, they finally have the ARRI Log C3. It's a paid update. And so just be aware of this. And of course, there's always a bit of limitation on which codecs and what resolution you can use the ARRI Log C3. And I guess in a way, maybe it's to protect some ARRI cameras. I don't know, but just be aware that you can't use it on everything when you implement this. And then there are some frame aspect ratio options, and the autofocus frame color can be now chosen like 10 colors just for better usability, and so on. The more evident update is for the S1R2, and now you can have 81K 7.2K by OpenGate 3x2, and raw data video can be output via the HDMI for external recording. And of course, you also get the ARRI LOXI3 paid update, and there's also support for HEIF recording in 4 to 0 10-bit format for those who are taking photos. So all in all, a solid update. Doesn't cost you anything unless you want the ARRI LOXI3, which personally I can recommend. I really like. I do still have an issue with the Sony log picture profile, because I think the skin tones. With the Panasonic picture log picture profile, because I think the skin tones are still much too red.
Yeah.
And I think the ARRI LOXI3 is really solving this, and it's just giving a more homogenic look, a very nice one. And another thing that we are doing in the backhand and background, we also retested some of the functionality of the S1 II when it comes to our lab test, because if you remember, we discovered some issue with the extended dynamic range that was in the menu but not really implemented. So we are now checking if this firmware update actually solved this issue, and we will update you guys if there is any change. So the extended dynamic range is really now being implemented, and if it's working.
Yeah, and it's one of those cases where we see that our lab test makes a difference.
Of course,
because
we identified the issue, showed it with Panasonic. They were very happy to hear in terms of cooperation and support, and they promised to deal with this and fix it with a firmware update. So obviously, the firmware is here. We will see if this update also include what we wanted them or kindly asked them to do.
Yeah. And sticking with firmware updates to cameras, there has been a firmware update to Blackmagic Camera 9.6, which is only affecting the Blackmagic Micro Studio Camera 4K G2. Now, I stated in the article, I'm always a little bit confused why they even give their they kind of have a name for the firmware update, but not so much the version, if that makes sense. So basically, it doesn't matter which Blackmagic camera you have. If there is a new update, which might affect only one camera, they call it, in this case, Blackmagic Camera 9.6, but it only affects this one camera, and 9.7 might be only for another camera.
Oh, really? Okay.
So that's a bit confusing sometimes. You really have to check, because the update, of course, I don't know. It seems like they always do like a blanket release, but it really only affects some of the cameras. So it's not that they're separate software.
But we can agree that the name strategy in general is very confusing. Well, also because the iPhone app is called Blackmagic Camera. Exactly.
And now the firmware itself is called Blackmagic Camera. So it's a bit like, what is this? Yeah. But long story short, so this camera, the Micro Studio Camera 4K G2, of course, a little tiny camera that has become very, very popular, which I don't think has any internal recording, only external. So it has an SDI out and also HDMI out. Now, this update actually enables the camera to use the Pixis monitor, which is a USB-C connection. So it gets the image through USB-C. Now, you might ask, where are you supposed to record? Because you can't, of course, then use an SSD anymore because the USB-C port is used. Well, I think the whole idea is that then you use the HDMI and go through an ATEM Mini or something like that and record externally through an ATEM. So
this camera, because I'm not familiar with this specific line of cameras, so that could record through USB-C externally? Because then
it's a USB-C. Yeah, there is only one USB-C port, and it's either... So apparently it is capable, this port, of delivering DisplayPort, like a image. That's why you can use a Pixis monitor, and it's just one. It's also touchscreen, which means you can have full camera controls on the Pixis monitor now. So it kind of goes both ways through this one cable, which is nice. However, there's only one USB-C port, which means you're losing the capability of using an SSD. But I think the main use case of this camera, of course, is kind of like you have it built in somewhere with multiple of those cameras in a studio or whatever environment, and then you go through an ATEM Mini to record anyway. So that this just really makes operating this one camera much easier, because you can have a monitor somewhere close. Let's say you're filming in a very confined space and you put this in the corner and have a nice wide angle shot of, let's say, an elevator or something. And now you can have the monitor somewhere hidden to really operate the camera next to the camera without having to go through the ATEM. But you can still record on the ATEM.
Okay, so not to dream about this being the new pocket camera, and some manufacturer is coming with a split USB-C.
You can do that. That should work, actually.
And a little cage. I mean, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a bit, of course, you might miss other things then, but it's and then at some point it's not much smaller anymore than a Blackmagic pocket cinema camera, or they dropped the pocket name actually also, but you know what I mean. The camera that used to be called Pocket is not that much bigger then. Yeah.
But anyway, I'm personally not that familiar with that line of cameras. So, but
as usual, when they release an update, it's available for free. So that's nice, really giving new features to a camera that's been out there for a while.
By the way, I just checked, because there is those hubs for USB-C. I see from Small Rig and others. I really wonder if those hubs are actually working well when you connect one USB-C and there is enough power to actually distribute the Pixie's monitor and
if the display port, the image still comes through. So,
yeah.
I mean, maybe Blackmagic has something like that by themselves actually, but I don't know. Okay, let's stick with updates. Well, the nice thing is, one thing that was kind of buried in this WWDC keynote by Apple a couple of weeks ago was, I mean, there's going to be a huge, finally, update to iPadOS 26. Why does this matter? Well, that's one thing that I've and many others have complained about for a very, very long time, that the iPad they always have been trying to market it as a creative device that kind of like, lets you be creative and do stuff, but it always was very, very limiting, because it only had iOS on there, and I always felt like iPadOS was essentially, until now, just a version of the same iOS you have on the iPhone, right? Just a larger, blown up version. There was hardly any features that you didn't have on the iPhone that was on the iPad. Now, which of course, because of different screen sizes, it would make sense to make the iPad a more productive tool, and which means things like multitasking, Windows, background processes. And believe it or not, just by the swipe of, with one update, they're giving us kind of all of that. So they listened after all that time. And this is going to be, I mean, from all the OS updates that Apple has announced this year, this is for sure the most significant ones for all their platforms, because I already installed it. I've been working with it on the iPad Pro for a week, and it makes such a huge difference. The last couple of articles that I wrote a lot of them on the iPad, and it's now, of course, it has Windows. You can it's almost like a mini Mac OS. You can work side by side, and a couple cool new features. The most important one, of course, being background rendering, like background processes
when
in general.
You edit.
In general, like background processes, which means that so far the way iOS worked is always that you do something, it from the phone, you do something, you export something, you're usually not able to leave the app and go to another app without that process being interrupted. I mean, there's a few exceptions. For example, AirDrop now works also in the background, which also didn't work in the background for a while, but that has already worked on the last version. And now they're opening this up. So, of course, there was a reason to limit this, because, of course, we all know from a Mac, if you have a lot of processes working in the background, you kind of forget about them, whatever, then it's, it slows down quite significantly. But they're finally enabling this, which means in turn that also a future version of Final Cut Pro for iPad, which they announced should come out over the summer, will be capable of finally doing background renders. And because that has been so annoying. When you used Final Cut Pro for iPad, which I reviewed before, I mean, I specifically reviewed the live multicam feature that they introduced with Final Cut Pro for iPad 2, where you can connect multiple iPhones and so on and do like simultaneous recording of all those and then afterwards edit that. I reviewed that, but one of the frustrating processes about this was that when you're exporting it, you need to keep it open. You just literally need to watch the status bar because you're not able to use your device for anything else. So that is finally changing. There will be a background process. But they went further and added a few more. And this, by the way, is available through an API. So it's not going to be only for Apple. The way they made it is that you will actually always see if you are in a different program. For example, here, if you move to the Mail app, you will still see that this is happening in the background, right? That's different from the Mac, where you can just kind of, like whatever the Finder does or a different app does, you can easily kind of lose an overview kind of what's happening in the background. I like this idea. I mean, it's still not a fully featured Mac. I'm sure you cannot do multiple background processes at the same time and stuff like that. But this is helpful. You will see that this is happening in the background. And this is, as I said, through an API, which means it's also going to be available for third parties. And they specifically also mentioned DaVinci Resolve for iPad. So I'm sure that Blackmagic Design is already working on a next version also that will support this because we know DaVinci Resolve is also available for the iPad. So that's quite cool. They didn't stop there. They added another nice feature, which is basically giving you controls of all the audio input through all the apps. So basically, when they identified a standard use case for iPads is podcasts. So a lot of people use it for podcasting, and now you can have you can define different microphone inputs for different apps.
Oh, nice.
So you might want to use the built-in microphone, or an external Bluetooth microphone for something else. And also, this is available throughout the system in every app. This is voice isolation. So the voice isolation feature, probably the same that is in Final Cut 11 on the Mac, which, by the way, has become a lot better. It's now, almost like the one in DaVinci. Before that, it wasn't that great. Now it's much better. And this one is now also built into the OS. So you can use this as you are recording already. So if you want an easy way of recording audio, I'm sure that it will sound amazing even with the built-in microphone. Because if you apply that, of course, nothing is better than using a proper microphone and so on. But still, it's great to have that. So yeah, they listen to a lot of things. It's very nice to see that they finally want to make it what it probably was always intended for, like a flexible, productive device. Because so far, what has been frustrating about the iPad for many years is that they delivered better and better and better hardware. Last but not least, with the latest iPad Pro, but you were always kind of shackled by the software. And this is starting to change. I mean, simply this, for me, the multiple windows thing that I'm working with in the developer beta that I'm testing, you can simply have, the most obvious thing, Android users will laugh, but finally you can have a window which is your WordPress backend, and the other one is your website where you're researching stuff, for your article, and it's working. That's crazy. The one thing that's still limited, but that is down to YouTube, I found you cannot have a YouTube video play as you're doing something else because YouTube wants to charge for that with YouTube Premium, which of course you don't have to pay for that on the desktop because nobody can prevent you from having a window running there while you're writing something. On iPad, like iPadOS, unfortunately, that's still the case. I hope YouTube reconsiders this limitation because now it becomes extremely frustrating, and it's now apparent for users that this is solely because YouTube wants to earn money and not for any OS limitation anymore. So, that is iPadOS 26 will be released in fall, and the update for Final Cut Pro to support this should come over the summer. So I'm guessing it'll be out already by the time that the final version is out. If you want to try it, if you have access to developer betas. You can use iPadOS already, but the background rendering in Final Cut will not work yet because that software hasn't been updated yet. So, yeah. Good. Let's move on to a little video that we published about Bono from U2. Well, basically, we've been approached by, I think, an agency or somebody behind this project where somebody made an immersive film about Bono, a feature-length documentary about Bono for the Apple Vision Pro. Now, that is supposedly the first feature-length immersive film that exists. And it's kind of impressive. Our writer Ruben watched it and liked it a lot, and actually had a chance to talk to the filmmaker Elad Ofer to talk about the process behind this. And it's a very nice interview that you can check out on our site. We're, of course, we have talked about the Vision Pro before and so on. Of course, it's very difficult to talk about something that you can't immediately experience. So the clips that we're showing are from the trailer, which are the 2D trailer, obviously. But for people who are able to check this out, the film is now available through the Vision Pro, I think through the Vision OS store. And we've reported about the Blackmagic Ursa Cine Immersive camera and other ways of actually shooting immersive video, which is now, finally getting a way of doing that properly.
So that was shot on the Blackmagic camera?
No, this was not shot on the Blackmagic camera. Let me check actually actually they talk about as much as they can, but what it was shot on, but it was not the Blackmagic Ursa Cine Immersive yet, because that's only coming out around now. I mean, they're saying that they are starting to ship it now, but it's in very small quantities. So yeah, but a lot of there's also the Apple camera that Apple used for this submerged film that we reported about before, which is something that was specifically developed for that. But as far as I understood, it was not shot on the Blackmagic camera. I'm not sure what they use actually. Yeah, so it's just interesting to hear from the filmmaker what it meant to work in this space and to completely rethink the process of making a film because of how people experience it. And very, very interesting interview. All right. Few more smaller things. There's been last week we reported about the Manfrotto One tripod that I did a video about at Build Expo in New York, which I was quite impressed about. Just for the sake of completeness, we also reported about the Peak Design Pro tripod, which has a very similar target audience. It's a tripod, like a pro tripod, but a kind of a travel tripod. I mean, the original Peak Design tripod, travel tripod, was extremely, extremely popular. And I think a lot of manufacturers are kind of following in that vein to create something similar.
I'm actually very curious what attracts people to those tripods. If it's the design, if it's the coolness, if it's the materials.
It's a great, because, it's very small and it's very, very
the
flexible.
Few people that I know that using it are not so thrilled like the original model. They kind of very quickly found the flaws.
Florian here behind the scenes, he likes
Florian,
it.
are you very happy with this tripod?
He's now nodding.
He's nodding, yes. Okay, we will talk later.
No, but it was extremely popular, and I think they managed to build something that's extremely sturdy and small at the same time. I mean, it's like we used it also on trade shows before. Of course, I think they are all kind of always, especially the smallest ones, predominantly targeted at photographers. And now with this new one, they're adding a couple features, of course, higher payload, but also fluid drag and that kind of stuff that makes it more interesting for filmmakers. And it's started on Kickstarter, and it was created together with Jimmy Chin and kind of based on his feedback. So yeah, basically I think it doesn't have the quick lock mechanism that the Manfrotto has, which I quite like. So you still have 3 levers on each leg. A lot of other things are similar. You have a center column. You have this kind of, not ball head, but like a swivel head that can kind of balance for a video camera. And then you have optional accessories to get like proper tilt, and it also has a nice drag and so on.
But surprisingly, the Manfrotto is much cheaper, no?
It is cheaper. The Manfrotto, I think, is around 500 without the head, if I'm not mistaken. And the Big Design Pro tripod starts at 800 for the light, Pro Light. Then there's the Pro for 900, and the Pro Tall, which is a little bit higher, for $1,000. So it is, the big one is significantly more expensive. Yes.
Yeah.
The Manfrotto also surprised me in the interview. For those of you who saw that I mean, I didn't know about the pricing, and I was just surprised to hear that it's really affordable. Also the head, I think the head is like 200.
The head is 220. But regarding the head, did you have a chance to actually check the fluidity of it?
The Manfrotto head?
Yeah, was it?
Well,
not?
Yes, it's, if you're used, of course, to real fluid heads, which have, like this massive build, kind of like from a Sachtler or Vinton or whatever. For me, it's always difficult to kind of work with Manfrotto heads in this thing, because of course they have now drag and counterbalance and all that, but it's kind of like, I don't know, it's not where the Sachtler ones are, for example. But that you can't expect that, because it's much lighter, much smaller,
much
cheaper, yes. And but it is absolutely for a light camera. Anything. I mean, they say, I think it's for the Manfrotto now at 3.5 kilograms payload. I think up to 3 kilos shouldn't be a problem at all. It always comes down to how balanced your rig is, in my experience. Like if you have an unbalanced rig and you have a very, like if it's a bit too front heavy, or especially if you build up a monitor and stuff like that, then you were starting to see the differences with a proper fluid head. But I mean, this one also
know that I solved the problem. I just shoot stills video. I don't move the head.
Okay, great.
Huh? I'm very innovative.
Very smart. Yeah. So, I mean, this is, of course, I think it's also not meant to replace a full fluid head, because it will never give you the full flexibility. But the whole point of this is being small and lightweight. So yeah. Anyway, this is available now on Kickstarter as well. We report about it. And let's move on to the Laowa. Yeah. You want to talk about that?
Not really, because I don't really, Fisheye, okay.
Well, Laowa, of course, being known as, I would say, the wide angle company for a long time at least. I mean, up until they introduced a lot more different lenses, and now of course with a Ranger series and the probe lenses and so on. But they originally started out filling that niche for wide angle lenses in general, usually but quite straight, right? Like wide angles that are quite very wide but have very straight lines. But this one isn't one of them, because that's a fisheye, and the 8 to 50 millimeter of course is super wide. And the whole idea is to have those extreme looks that you get from a fisheye, of course, which is basically a circular image, and then you can crop in to, fully.
I mean, it's a much more expensive lens than their other mirrorless model. This is like 1,400 instead of the 700.
But it's a cinema lens, so it's a fully geared lens.
It built differently.
DL.
It's REPL.
Yeah.
So it's very unique. It's really amazing that the company is always looking for uniqueness, always to produce something which is a bit different than the others. And still, it's not a big company, and they have the capacity and capability to produce such lenses. So
I think it's cool that it's a zoom fisheye, because that's quite rare. I mean, sometimes I find then when you use an 8 millimeter fisheye, it's just too extreme, and then you need to change to a normal wide angle, and just to have this in one is, of course.
And there's a full frame lens, which is also amazing. To have 8 millimeter on a full frame, sensor. Wow.
Yeah. Good. I think the last one we can talk about is an update to Eddy AI.
Yeah, so Eddy AI is an editing assistant, AI assistant, that's supposed to make the life of an editor much easier. Usually you just prompt what you want from it to do, and for example, it should work. And if you have a 15-20 minutes interview and you want to cut it into something more manageable, or log what's in it, it's supposed to do the job quite good and help with that. Now they're coming up with 2 essential updates, which I think it's very nice to see the company moving forward. And one is the support for multiple languages. And the languages that will be now supported are, I remember German basically, but let me just double check that there's French, Spanish, and German. So literally you'll be able to give a ChatGPT-like prompt and ask the software to help you with editing. And the other thing is, which is quite interesting, is the B-roll logging. This is never too easy on any AI software to do, but obviously you are able to do this right now, and also A-roll logging for multi-camera support. One thing that I do want to highlight, that Eddy AI is actually giving 1,000 independent filmmakers a 1 year for free, a full 1 year subscription to the AI Pro. It's worth usually $100 a month. And in the article you will find where to apply actually, and hopefully be accepted. But I think it's very nice and very generous. Shamir, the person behind this project, he was a documentary filmmaker himself, so he's very much connected to our industry. Later on, he moved more into technology, and that's a result of what he's doing. We're seeing now. But I'm just saying it's nice that they are thinking about independent filmmakers. All in all, there are other 3 plans. If you are not accepted to be one of those lucky independent documentary filmmakers who has a free access, you have a starter access, which free, and that allows you a certain, I think 2 full project exports per month, and then you have the plus version, which is $25 a month, and then the pro version, which is $100 a month. Yeah, just visit the site, see if it might be something for you. Again, it's not coming to replace anybody.
But you've tried it before, right?
I tried it, but I tried it more because there is also an option to create some reels. That was what I was interested in doing, and it 80% of the time did okay. But again, for complete transparency, we are in contact with the company, giving feedback, and they are trying to improve on every circle of software update. They're trying to improve the way that at least the reels are working. And now I can see also that obviously they were very busy in the back end to create the multi-language support and A and B roll logging.
Well, for me, that's always in general, talking about editing preparation also as part of my build presentation in New York was, using workflow tools to enhance your workflow, to kind of take away the stuff you don't want to do. And people are always getting scared about being replaced by AI, but when in reality, I think it's just, you should look at the tools that kind of can make your workflow easier. And from my personal experience, I hate nothing more than logging my own clips. You know what I mean? Like look at the stuff that I shot and then find the best clips and kind of adding metadata and organizing an edit before I actually get to the edit, or maybe up until the assembly edit. And then when it started, it's starting to become fun. And for documentary stuff especially, the problem is always that you have those very long interviews that are, you need to, and then even if you shot it yourself, you need to remember, when did we talk about that topic? When did we do this? This is already getting solved by this automatic transcription stuff, which is amazing for me, which is built into a lot of, we talk about this in our latest MZ course, the subtitles mastery. So, which is talking about captions and automatic transcription and so on. But the amazing thing is being able to do this paper cut, where you're like, okay, there is this sentence from this interview, and now I can look for keywords in the other one, and then I can just literally copy paste text from the transcript, and then I will have an edit, for example, yeah. And then also tools like Eddy, which of course should help to kind of that would be kind of the next step, to have this assembly edit already based on the footage that I have, halfway automated, of course. Because it will never do, because you said it's kind of like doing fine for 80%, but that's enough, right? Because you
for the reels. I was talking about
reels.
But
in general, I mean, it's like you will get an edit at some point, and then I think as soon as I have something on the timeline which isn't terrible, I will have something to start working with, and then I'm already kind of into it. You know what I mean? It's like it's much less daunting than actually start from scratch with nothing. Right?
I have to say that during CineGear, I worked, and the cameraman that was assisting us, a local cameraman, he was using Eddie AI quite a lot for his projects, and he was extremely happy with it. So, and he was the first one that I met that was simply using it. And of course, for the things that he felt that need some improvement, he was in direct contact with Shamir, who is apparently very open-minded and liked the engagement with the community. So if you're editing or shooter editor and you're looking for something to assist you with editing, especially with the login part, why not give it a try? Eddie AI is, you can try for free and then see if it's working for you and then take it from there.
Yeah, I think... we can wrap it up here.
Yeah, I think let's summarize and say that this week was like updates, many updates in different topics and subjects, but all in all, a lot is coming up.
A lot is coming up, and the filmmaking tech world is never sleeping. Thanks, Johnny.
So do I. So do we.
So we can sleep. Yeah. All right. Thanks everybody for watching. Stay tuned to CineD for a lot more reviews and a lot more news to come, and also next week's episode of CineD Focus Check. And thanks everybody for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform. Thanks.
Thank you.